Careful, a lack of finances and a lack of commitment could see us not preserving our history properly, and as fake news and misinformation continue to dominate, the next generation may be missing out. We're in the heart of Heritage Month now. Let's speak to Dr. Geraldine Frieslaar, the Director of the SA History Archive, on the importance of preservation. Dr. Frieslaar, good evening to you. Thank you for your time. We talk about protecting our heritage, but are we protecting our information, the archives that actually have our information, that actually contain our written heritage?
So archives and museums, heritage institutions are very important. I mean, I feel a bit that it's only when we get to September that we are appreciating the importance of heritage. And in the same token, given all the challenges that we've faced during this year with COVID-19, but also given in the post-apartheid settlement, history and culture has always been kind of the stepchildren of, and it's never been, because there's been a range of social issues obviously to deal with. But if we do not preserve our heritage and our history, we will be like a people without, and to quote Marcus Garvey, we will be like a people without history, and which would be like a tree without roots. And the way in which to use his heritage is to use effective history, and that is to question the past, but also to question the present. So we need records to hold government and individuals to account. So in order to create accountability, but also then to go back to the past in order to understand what went not wrong, but how do you plot a way forward in order to understand all the nuances and the different histories that there is, that archives offer, by reading colonial archives, reading liberation archives against each other and with each other.
I suppose, I mean, so many countries have myths about their history that actually aren't based in fact. We want to avoid that, don't we? We want to make sure that people actually know what a fact actually is, what happened and what didn't.
Right. And so for that to happen is that access to information should happen by default. We take into account obviously personal information, third-party information. But that being said, the default in South Africa has always been a default to secrecy rather than openness. So actually it is gotten increasingly difficult to access records that should be that is in the public interest and should be in the public domain. Personal records, for example, where there is no next of kin, the people are deceased, and where it's established that it's in the public interest, that should be open. And you should not have to go the legal route of filing a PIA application in order to access records at the National Archives, for example, or have to go the route of litigation and be tied up in a court case for 6 years.
Who's actually blocking this? I mean, I know there's a case about the Reserve Bank, but apart from them, who's actually blocking access to these records? I mean, surely, as you say, we should have access to them. Who's blocking it?
Well, it's both public and private entities. There's various laws obviously governing and guiding the process of obtaining information, but sometimes the blockage is also just in that there is not an understanding of the legislation pertaining to access to information. So it's often that, and SAHA has been integral throughout the years in giving training to government officials on PIA, the use and application of PIA. But they seem to be, sometimes it's not intentional, it's a very unintentional consequence of not actually understanding how PIA is supposed to be working.
Who's actually supposed to be looking after all of this information? I mean, who's in charge of these archives? And that leads to a question, of course, of whether these archives are then being looked after properly.
Well, Stephen, the problem is that museums and archives, specifically I am speaking from the point of view of an independent archive, we are faced with dire financial constraints.